Live! Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of Lunchtime is Dicetime, where we're going to be talking about role-playing on our lunch break. And we're basically just kind of live streaming the chats that the three of us have once a week on a Tuesday morning anyway. but better and slicker. But I am going to introduce myself and then get my teammates to introduce themselves. I am Becky Anderson, one half of Black Armada Games, and now I'm going to hand over to the person who was next into the green room. The long know who was late.
Hi everyone, I'm Nick Bates, he him pronouns of Ickbat Games. Josh, it's good to see you.
Hello, I'm Josh, the latecomer. I was here when it started, so it's fine. Pronouns he him, the other half of Black Armada Games.
And we got a great set of people already watching and lots of amazing familiar faces in the comments. So really excited for that. And today we're going to be talking about a subject close to my heart. And I've brought a whole bunch of props with me to talk about some of my favourite games. So the conversation that we're going to have today is about using relationship questions in TTRPGs to kind of create all of that really juicy, brilliant drama that I in particular love. But I know that Nick, you were really interested in this topic. So do you just want to tell us why this is something you are super excited for?
Yeah, I sure can. There are two big reasons. The first is I'm right in the middle of designing this bit of Speed Demons, some juicy starting relationship questions. But the kind of bigger bit is that I find this quite hard. And so the first thing I did when I started thinking, how on earth am I going to do this, is I went straight to Becky and to Josh, both of whom, in my opinion, do this very, very well, and asked them to carry me. So they're going to do that again on this live stream.
So I think that's probably a bit too generous, but thank you. I'm going to start by kind of defining my terms a bit, or like posing the question, what do I mean when I talk about relationship questions? And then I'm going to invite other people, Nick and Josh, and anybody in the comments to define what they mean. Obviously, I've flashed up my little set of games that I'm going to be referring to quite a lot in this. And the eagle-eyed amongst you will have probably noticed they're all powered by the Apocalypse games. And that's because I think that powered by the Apocalypse games, I don't think they invented relationship questions, but I think they baked it into playbooks in a way which hadn't really happened before and became just kind of a normal part of the template of how we talk about writing games, which I think was really cool. So the bit that I mean when I talk about relationship questions is it's the hex questions in Apocalypse World, it's the strings questions in Monster Hearts. It's the bit which establishes a relationship of some sort between you and another player character, and there's lots of different ways of doing that. But so that's what I mean when I talk about relationship questions. But is somebody gonna have a different view to me?
I don't have a different view, but I think that there's like a really wide range in terms of like how strongly those questions define the relationship. Like almost from we met each other once and a thing happened, through to you're my former mentor who betrayed me and now I want my revenge because secretly you don't know that I've actually been sleeping with your
I'd play that game.
Yeah. So that like one is much more relationship-y than the other, and they all serve to do a purpose like of establishing that we're not just two total strangers who happen to be going on an adventure together, like you would have got in a traditional like dungeon crawl TTRPG, but some of them creates much more than that.
Nick.
So as I said, I'm the novice in this conversation. I think the thing that's interesting to me that you said, Becky, is that kind of PBTA games brought this into the sort of standard for playbook creation.
I mean, I think that they did, but I'm not a historian, and I'm fully prepared for somebody to at me in the comments and be like, "No, Becky."
But I think the controversial point I'm going to make is that sometimes I feel like the sort of trap we've fallen into is that people put questions in because they're in those other games, but they don't spend a lot of time and energy thinking about what those questions are for. Like, what are they doing? Why have you included them with the playbook? What purpose do they serve beyond the point of character generation? Which is kind of the thing I'm hoping we get to in this conversation. I feel like it's one thing to establish facts in character creation. It's entirely another thing to establish things that will impact on play once you actually get rolling.
I think that's where we finesse them. I think I was actually going to just very briefly, before I get into that, hark back to Josh's comment about how we all used to play before relationship questions. And I certainly remember quite a few sessions. Am I coming through okay?
Yes.
Quite a few sessions of games where I would turn up. I would be in a party of adventurers, maybe it's a D&D game, and our party of adventurers is supposed to have been adventuring together for the last 5 to 10 years, but actually it's the first time that we've ever played these characters together, and it felt so weird and stilted. And I think that's where my love of relationship questions came from, to kind of shortcut that. We've been an adventuring party for 10 years, but we're acting like we barely know each other because we barely know each other. But I think that you're really right, Nick. And we get to this really interesting question here of relationship questions can either establish something about the history, some facts that we need to know about the character, or they can set up some really interesting potential future relationship conversations and juiciness. And the best ones do both, I think.
Josh, I feel like you have opinions here. You've got opinion face on.
Yeah. Well, so I think
face.
I think they can do a lot more. I think like the minimum thing they do is just establish that we know each other, and like you said, they kind of get past that awkwardness of why are we even in a group together. But they can also help to define and or reinforce things about your character. They can help to bring key themes that you want to grapple with in the game into focus, and connect other characters to those themes too. And of course, as I think you just said, Becky, they can set up interesting relationship drama. And I think those three things that I just mentioned, they're not mutually exclusive. And in fact, some of the really strong relationship questions will do all three. But as you said, as one of you said, you don't actually necessarily need the full Monty for every game. If your game is very much about, I'm grappling with difficult themes and I'm having really complex relationships, then you really want to hit people hard with that. But if you are interested in a dungeon crawl, maybe you just need to know that you know each other, and that's enough. Maybe you don't even need that. Like, you can have a premise that says, we're just 4 people all working for the same organization. We don't need to know each other. We know that we've got a job to do. So it's true that you don't need them for everything, and it's about picking the right type of question that hits whichever of those characteristics that your game is interested in.
Do we want to talk examples before we dig into how to do that?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So, I would characterize, Josh, I just want to play a dungeon crawl, but I want to kind of have a little bit of history with my fellows who I'm supposed to have a bit of history with, as sort of like a social lubricant, really, if you like, to just kind of smooth out the first few interactions, because we've got some sort of shared understanding of where we're at. And I think good questions for that kind of very basic level probably are, as you've just said, Josh, let's just let's just talk about a time that we worked together before and how it went.
Yep.
It can be, as you say, it can be super basic. I think I don't want to get cancelled, but I think that early PBTA was quite good for questions which established history, established history. And I'm really thinking very much of Apocalypse World and Monster Hearts, especially First E of both of those. Very good for establishing the history of the characters, but not necessarily setting up some future badness. You know, if there was going to be future badness based on those questions, it's because the players were going to be taking that question as a jumping off point and then really running with it. It wasn't giving the players a lot to do that with. It was down to the players. And then the questions which are setting up a future situation. So I'm actually going to give my favorite future situation question, which, much to my shame.
Oh no,
Ooh.
much
We've
to
had our
my
first
shame.
stream disaster. Let me, while we're waiting to see if Becky resurfaces, real quick shout out to games that acknowledge the weirdness that you don't all know each other right at the start and bake that into the core premise, rather than games that just slide straight over it. I'm thinking specifically of things like Wolves Upon the Coast here, where they know that you're not going to know each other at the start, and then they make that part of the game's core premise. But that's a bit of a tangent. Josh, do you have a favorite type of this sort of question that you wanted to?
Yeah, I can get into that. So like for me, it's partly about being concrete. So I think you can have quite vague questions that just set up a vibe. Like, let me just see if I got any in my my notes here.
I'm really sorry, I'm back.
You're back.
Sorry.
You vanished just as you said to your shame.
I know. It's good, wasn't it? My internet dropped out. It's very annoying, but I'm back, and I can tell you what it is. That it's not, to my shame, it's not a question I wrote, and it's
That's
not a
not
question.
shameful.
It's not, well, because I feel like I wish I had written it, and it's not a question from a PBTA game, which I feel like it should have been, but it's from Hillfolk by Robin Laws, and there are lots of things which I struggle with about Hillfolk, but the thing that I love about Hillfolk is that it just kind of has one relationship question for everybody, and it's the same one, and it's what do I want from your character, and why won't you give it to me? And it's love, respect, inheritance, responsibility. You know, you can fill in a really interesting word there, and it sets up tells me about me, what is important to me, tells us about our relationship, what is it I want from our relationship, and it sets up the future, why won't you give it to me, which is both setting up juicy conversations about why you won't give it to me, but also means that I have a quest now and I've got the conditions, and if I fulfill those conditions, maybe you will give it to me. And so I think that little question, for all the hours I've spent crafting amazing questions in like bite marks, I feel like that is so simple and it does it all.
I don't think it does do it all. And it links to what I was just saying while you were out, Bex, which is like, I think it's not concrete enough. And it's good, don't get me wrong, I agree with you. That's a really good starting point for a relationship question, is that kind of a need and a so that's imparting direction and momentum, but then this kind of block which creates conflict. Great, you know, conflict is a great thing to have in certain types of games, but it's not very concrete, because like if I say, oh, I really want you to marry me, but you won't marry me, right? Really simple. That doesn't really tell me about anything that's happened so far. It doesn't tell me about stuff that's happened. It doesn't tell me stuff that might happen in the future. It just means I'm going to do like that guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine and constantly ask you to marry me, and you're going to go no. Well, fine. That's not very interesting. But what, you know, the kind of backstory of maybe why did I think that you might want to marry me, and what happened to make that go wrong. And so that I've picked a really stupid example there, but I'm going to see. I did choose some examples, like the gun lugger in Apocalypse World has "which one of you left me bleeding," right? Now that doesn't fit with what you just said, because there's no kind of "what do I want?" Probably just want to kick your ass. But it is a concrete thing that happened. I don't just hate you, I hate you for a reason. And you can contrast that with, from the same game, the brainer has "who most evidently dislikes and distrusts me," which is fine, you know, and you maybe don't need a reason, because it's the brainer, they're a freak psychic, and they might do anything horrible to your mind, so you don't need a reason. But "who left me bleeding" is so much better, and it creates that kind of concrete reason why we've got beef right from the start. And by the way, I think some really good ones in Bite Marks. You can't say this, Becky, because you wrote it, but
I think I can, but I'll be much nicer if you say it.
Yeah, there's a fantastic one which I can't find in my notes, but it's something like, what's the worst thing that I've ever done to protect the pack, and who knows about it, and why haven't they told everybody, or something like that.
Yeah,
which is brilliant,
who's keeping that secret?
Right, so it's one really concrete thing. I did a really bad thing. What was it? So it's not just I'm this dick who does bad things, but we won't bother to think about what they are. We're going to define what the worst thing that I did was. Secondly, not everybody knows about it, so there's the possibility they're going to find out and create future relationship drama later on. And thirdly, somebody does know and they're keeping it a secret. Why? Interesting relationship baked in right there. So you've built in the theme for the character, which is kind of taking ruthless decisions for the greater good. You've baked in an interesting relationship, and you've defined something about the character all in one question, which is obviously brilliant.
I'm going to talk about that question in particular, because it did a specific thing that I was obviously done 3 specific things, but there's a 4th specific thing in some ways, which is I think that sometimes, particularly in the Powered by the Apocalypse World games, which kind of have characters in them which are, I don't want to say bad guys, but are complicated and who have done bad things. I think that I have absolutely played in games where people have set up characters who are complicated and have done bad things, and then they've really kind of played it in a really milquetoast way, and it's like, you weren't really doing any bad things, were you? You're kind of like, you're actually playing a good guy pretending to be a bad guy. And one of the things that I specifically wanted to do with that question was establish, I want you, the player, to have to buy in from the get-go, from the character creation session, that you did do a bad thing. So you can't lightweight this, you know, because not only are you going to have to admit that you've done a bad thing to me, the GM, so that we know that's definitely happened, but another character knows. And so you can neither lightweight it to me, and you cannot lightweight it in character either.
And all the players.
And all the players.
So there's a secret here, but you've placed it on the table in front of everyone, which is the best thing to do with secrets in role-playing games.
Yeah, it's also, by the way, quite a clever bit of safety in there, because like, we've already decided what the worst thing that you ever did was, and we have the opportunity to go, whoa, that's too far. Can we make it a little bit less bad? Unlike the classic trad game experience of somebody just doing something bad midway through a game, and everyone kind of going, oh, okay, I guess we're torturers now. Great.
Yeah.
The relationship questions in Bite Marks are kind of like the best kind of punch in the face. So if anyone's looking for inspiration, give them a look.
They're very specific to the sort of game it is, I would say. It's a game which is a punch in the face, punch in the guts, emotional guts game. And so, you know, with those relationship questions, it was really important to me that I went, at full throttle. Because I do think it's a shame where you have a game where some of the relationship questions are really full throttle and some are not. Now, I appreciate, because I think, Josh, you're probably going to jump in here with that people might not want to go that hard. And I do appreciate that it's nice to have some variance for people who don't want to go that hard. But I also think it's a shame, like if I'm looking through I know that you've put this example down, so I hope you don't mind if I use it, Josh, but I'm going to use a Monster Hearts example. I think there are some Monster Hearts questions which are really, really good, and then there are others which are just like the vampires who finds me beautiful, take a string on me. And I'm like...
No, it's worse than that. It's
Is
just
it worse than that?
It's you are beautiful, you get a string on everyone. So it's like, it's establishing something about the character, but it doesn't really create a relationship or any themes at all. It's not really a relationship question. It's just a means of imparting some strings and saying something about the character, which is,
So,
an unusual choice given that Monster Hearts feels like a very angsty drama sort of game.
Yeah, but I mean, questions can be good in games which aren't angsty drama games to provide that social lubricant. I did want to ask Nick. I know that you are partway through designing relationship questions for Speed Demons, and I know that we had a long conversation about it last week, a 2-hour session with you last week, which was very fun. I was very curious as if you could give us a bit of an update on how you think you're going to use relationship questions and how you're now finding the design process on that.
Yeah, I can do that. And this just goes to show, folks, we give you the highlights. We save all the really long conversations for off camera. Just before we get to that, though, I did want to mention one that I quite like, which is now, to be fair, I've never played the game, but conceptually I quite like entanglements in Hearts of Wulin, because what they do is they very explicitly, right out of the gate, set up a juicy PC NPC PC triangle. Which is very, very much in keeping with the genre. It's all Chinese wuxia melodrama, emphasis on the melodrama, and these kind of triangles set up a lot of conflict between desire and duty. So they're leaning real hard into the themes of the genre. I've got a couple of examples. The examples I just wrote down are: I love X, who I overlooked for too long. Now they love Y. Which I think is great. And my teacher X has passed me over in favor of Y, my rival. I think they're great.
Those are really good.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the thing I picked up first from our conversation was when you're sitting down to write these things, it's kind of harkening back to what we said at the start. It's really helpful to understand why you're doing it. Like, what purpose are they serving for the game? What are you trying to get out of them? So that then you can really hone your questions to get that thing happening at the table, rather than just sticking them in because maybe we should stick them in or something. So let me say a little bit about the Speed Demons chat. I think the main thing that I got from that conversation was a very clear understanding in my head, I hope, about the purpose that relationship questions are going to serve in that game. Out of that conversation, I've got a little hierarchy for what I think they should be doing, ranked in sort of order of importance. And that hierarchy, which is going to take a tiny bit of explanation, so I'm sorry, folks, but that hierarchy is: first, they should prime the sync mechanics in the game, SYNC, in sync, out of sync. Second, they should reinforce that characters are part of a team. And third, they should try and reinforce the themes of each character's playbook. So the first two are, I think, in some ways the most important ones, partly because this is a Forged in the Dark game rather than a PBTA game. But the first one, prime the sync mechanics. Sync is really about whether or not your team is functioning well, right? Is the team getting on well? Are you in sync? Is everything moving smoothly? Or has some piece of kind of emotional drama or beef or something like that interrupted that flow? And one of the hopefully nice things about the way that works in the game is that if two of the characters on the team have beef, then that has consequences for everyone on the team. So everybody has an incentive to get into everybody else's business to try and smooth out the functioning of that team. So when I say prime the sync mechanics as my kind of first... it is our decision to cut off at the half-hour mark.
Thanks, Dominic.
Appreciate that. So when I say prime the sync mechanics, what I really mean is try and generate some sort of emotional drama, but specifically some emotional drama between races that could kick off at any time. So it might already be in play when the game begins, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's simmering along underneath, but it's simmering along close enough to the surface that it could kick off at any moment. So that's the first goal. But then, and this is a point I think you made, Josh, which is my second point on there. If you spend all of your time answering relationship questions or whatever at the start of a game, establishing beef or potential beef between all of these races, you can start to forget pretty quickly that actually these are people who, they're a team. They want to spend time together. So you also need to do some work to establish the fact that there is a thing, and maybe you can talk about this in relation to bite marks, Becky. There is a thing that everybody here cares about. If it's all the bad stuff and none of the good stuff, then it's going to feel unbalanced, I think. Those are the main things I took from our chat.
I think that you're right. And I think that we've kind of focused on relationship questions that lean into the drama and the bad stuff, but they can lean into the drama of the good stuff, like the Hearts of Wulin question. Who am I in love with that I overlooked for too long? And that can lead to really great dramatic scenes of reconciliation and, you know, the opposite end of things. And I definitely remember a Bite Marks game that we played in, Nick, where your character had a really cool dramatic reconciliation with, I think, Sue's character.
Yep.
Which was really strong and really powerful and really moving. And when that happened, it felt like kind of something had healed in the heart of the pack as well. So it affected the dynamic of the entire party. And I like the fact that you're doing this in sync, out of sync, to kind of try and capture a bit of that in the group play. I was just going to very quickly show up John's comment about relationships, using these relationship questions to fuel other moves in play, like the vulnerable move in Carved from Brindlewood. And don't you have an intimacy move in Last Fleet, I want to say, Josh?
It's called Reach Out.
Reach Out move.
Yeah. But so, yeah, like you create issues that are going to be grist for those sorts of vulnerable conversations for sure. But I do like even the thing that you said about Hearts of Wulin, about, oh, I'm in love with somebody, but I left it too long and now they're in love with somebody else. That is still drama. That is still basically, I want something from you and I can't get it right now. You can have relationship questions that are straightforwardly positive, like, who saved my life? You know, that kind of, here is a good thing that we've done together, a reason why we trust each other, a reason why we've got each other's backs. It doesn't really create any drama unless, of course, somebody resents the fact that their life was saved. But it does mean that, like, I've got a reason not to kind of treat you badly. I've got a reason why I would want to save your life in turn. And all of that can be really good. And I think that it very much depends on the type of game you're trying to run. But if you've got a game where you want people to function as a team, those questions are good. And I think I've made sure in Last Fleet that half the questions are like kind of positive, like half the relationship questions are, you know, why did you stab my best friend or whatever? And the other half are kind of, why did you save my life? Because it is a game about paranoia and scarce resources and infighting. So I want something that pulls people together against those forces, so they're not, otherwise it's just a game about being horrible to each other, which is not what that game's supposed to be.
And you should never forget when you're designing these things, as it's clear you didn't, Josh, that everybody is asking everybody else questions. So if I go ahead and establish that I have a really strong, solid relationship with Becky's character, and then you, Josh, go ahead and establish that you've got beef with Becky's character, but you and I get along great, well, we've got there's drama there, right? It's not encoded necessarily in a specific question, but it is in the fact that we're all asking each other questions at the start of play. Can you see why I find this hard? I find this hard.
But I feel, look, it's interesting you just said that, because you, the designer, are only one half at most of what's going on there. You know, a lot of what you're doing is handing it to the players to make something good with it. You're giving them a cool ingredient to shortcut the process of coming up with interesting drama or cool relationships. You cannot write the perfect relationship question, because someone can still give a really stupid answer to that question. And even a bad question can have a good answer if somebody takes it and uses it in a really interesting way.
I think for me as well, part of what relationship questions do is giving players, and part of the reason why a player who answers a bad question well will still be at an advantage is because, and I'm not going to name any names, but I think there are some games out there which don't do any of this relationship building work, and then kind of expect you to hit juicy drama and relationships from a standing start. And for me, these questions are about saying, okay, we've all agreed that we want to play a cool drama game. Awesome. I, Becky, find it very hard to have let's find out in play what our character's relationship is. It's like, well, no, if you want me to have a hard drama-filled game, I need to prime that pump. It's not enough to just say, well, we're just going to find out in play, and then I show up in the first 5 minutes and start accusing people of doing a bunch of stuff that I haven't necessarily got their consent for out of character, saying you betrayed me and you did this, making it up out of whole cloth. And I think what these questions do is it's priming the pump, but it's allowing us to have those kind of consent questions beforehand about how are we going to play this? What are you up for? What are you interested in exploring? Rather than me at the start of the game trying to inject a load of drama in scene, in character, without having done any of that prep work.
Just on that point about priming the pump, I would say a key thing there is unfinished business. Like, the more you write a relationship question that defines something that has happened and is completely finished and provides interesting color to our relationship but is done, the more it's just... It's not going to be priming that pump. It's just something that I might want to bitch to you about, but it's not actually, I don't actually need anything right now. Whereas those kind of, I've got a secret, you don't know about it type of thing is automatically set up for something's not finished yet, something's got to happen in the future. So if you've got the kind of game where you want there to be drama in between the characters in session, that's the kind of question that really does that, I think.
I think that's something else as well. If you take the hill folk, I want something from you, why won't you give it to me? Or if you take that bite marks question, my character did something terrible, your character knows about it, but you're keeping my secret. Why are you keeping my secret? Is that both of them give this kind of future conditional situation that if certain conditions are met, maybe I will not keep that secret anymore. I am keeping your secret because of X. If X changes to Y, I might blow it. I currently won't give you respect. If you go out and change the equation, we will change our relationship. So it's got like a built-in valve for, and how are we going to change things, which I love.
And an invitation. Right?
And an invitation,
to the player, right? You're kind of saying, I feel like every time you say you answer one of these questions or pose one of these questions, you're kind of saying, okay, now I've established this juice, please mess with it.
Yeah.
Make it hard for me. Yeah.
I love that. That.
Is it worth saying too, very briefly, that I think you can overdo it here too. I feel like the number one failure mode here is too many of these things. If you've got too many questions that you're asking, too much stuff that you're establishing out of the gate, then you get overloaded. It gets hard to think of new interesting stuff. You forget half of it when play happens. It doesn't. I think this is one of the things that Bite Marks is a very focused game, very focused kind of thematically. It also has a very, is it just one question per playbook? It has a very small number of questions.
It is one per playbook, yeah.
Yeah, and so that is probably not the right call for every game, but for that game, it means that you're always laser focused on the output of those very specific questions. Whereas a game where there's, 4 questions on the sheet and the rules encourage you to answer all 4, then, in a 4-player game, that's 16 things flying around. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I think, Josh, in Last Fleet, I think there's 4 per playbook, but you ask people to ask 2. Yeah.
Well, it's 2 or more, but
two-ish,
also the Last Fleet questions are not all of that kind of.
Right.
Why did you shoot my best friend's horse? It's
Space Horse.
Quite plenty. Space Horse, obviously, yeah, of course. There's plenty of kind of how did you save my life type questions, which inject a sense of we've got a relationship without loading up too much drama. The other thing I wanted to mention, talking about our own games, is Ex Tenebris, because a thing that I'm quite pleased about with Ex Tenebris is the relationship questions aren't tied to the playbook archetypes, because they are more kind of those are grouped more according to skills and abilities than they are relationship types. So instead, you pick a role, and the first thing you do is you're each picking a role and you're doing that as a group. So we learn, for example, that all 3 of us came into the game intending to play the rebel, and then we go, oh no, that doesn't really work, does it, because we'll have something to rebel against. So you kind of start off by creating a relationship ecosystem before you start answering all the detailed questions. Whereas I think a thing that can happen is you go through the questions and at the end you go, oh dear, we've created a really negative set of relationships here. Oh well, too late.
That's actually what happened with my first attempt at relationship questions in a Speed Demons playtest. There was just too much negativity coming out of the first trial. But I think on Ex Tenebris, one of the things I also love about that setup that you've got there is that when you're choosing your role is like a single word or a very short phrase.
Yeah.
And so in addition to giving you some relationship questions that you can use to establish those kinds of things, I find myself constantly glancing back at my role just to remind myself who this character is, so that I can make so I don't know if folks in the chat are listening to Black Armada Tales, but Humda, who I'm playing, the technologist, the role I've taken is Tearaway. I don't know if we mentioned that since the first session.
No, I don't think we have. But you can tell.
It reminds me a lot of someone once said that they PBTA games were the ones, and I know that X10 is not a PBTA game, but the best PBTA games are the ones where the playbooks are based on social roles, not bard, fighter, that sort of thing. And I think that I've certainly seen that coming to the fore. The PBTA games I think I've enjoyed the most and have played the best for me have been there's been the social role inside the playbook itself. I did just very quickly want to say, just to post this that John's put out as a shout out to James Diamato's Ultimate RPG Campfire card deck, which sounds really interesting, which I don't actually have, but sounds very interesting. And I'm also wanting to say that we're getting very close to our 40-minute mark, and I know that Doc Dicer wants to just
keep going
sit here forever, but I will kill over if I don't get some food. So I thought that we probably ought to do a very, very quick 2 things. We'll do critical hits or crit fails. I think Josh's crit fail might be Kickstarter backend right now, mightn't it? But before we get into critical hits and critical fails, I was just going to do a tiny weeny bit of promo. I hope that's okay, that we've got a live Kickstarter going on right now for Advent of Adventure and Advent of Abomination, which are solo journaling games with prompts behind each of the little doors. I'm really excited because I love the idea, but last time we did it, we hand cut all the little doors and I hated it. So I'm excited that it's coming back and I don't have to cut anything. And I was just going to put a little link in below. And otherwise, I wasn't really going to say anything else about it. Is that okay?
Back it, obviously.
Okay.
Well, yeah, please. Please go get yourself some cool Advent calendars.
It is a hard sell doing Christmas in July, I won't lie. But if we do it now, then we can get it into people's hands for the 1st of December, well before the 1st of December this year. And that's the reason.
To be fair, this feels like Christmas weather to me.
Well, that's because you're Australian, right? So shout out any Australians out there feeling super festive in the heat. You know what you need to do for yourselves. Get an advent calendar.
God, should we do an Advent of Australia one where it's just there's all kind of people with shrimps and stuff enjoying themselves on the beach?
It's all barbecue.
Very Christmassy.
Yeah. But let's just very quickly do a quick round. I just want to do a critical hit round. Just to end on a really nice note. Thank you everybody for coming. What's your critical hit this week, Nick?
So my I also have a critical fail, which is admin. But my critical hit is the non-fiction work of Patrick Radden Keefe. He's written a bunch of books on a bunch of interesting topics, but I just finished Empire of Pain, all about the Sackler family and opioid use and abuse, particularly in the United States, but worldwide. Just horrifyingly interesting stuff. And I'm currently reading London Falling, about a apparent murder in London, and Russian oligarchs and dirty money and all that kind of stuff. But the reason I bring it up is his writing is like, these read like blockbusters that just happen to be so incredibly well researched, like pages and pages of footnotes at the end, no quotes that are not directly recorded or attributed. Like, it's all serious journalism, but serious journalism that reads like a blockbuster. Great stuff. Patrick Radden Keefe. London Falling is his most recent.
Very cool. Very cool. My critical hit is going to be, you can see on my shirt, Rollfest. That 2 weekends ago, Josh and I were invited to go to Rollfest in Italy by our Italian publisher, and it was so magical. I know I've done a blog post and stuff about it, but like, I never experienced a convention in a town, a medieval town. So when you're walking to different bits of the convention, you're walking through like cobbled streets, and the whole thing is in the shadow of a massive medieval castle, and it's just so atmospheric and so cool. And it was incredibly joyful experience and just absolutely amazing. Josh.
Well, I was going to say I finished like most of the core rulebook layout for X10, which is a great critical hit for me. But you've made me want to talk about books, Nick. So I've just finished The Human Division by John Scalzi, which is like at probably the opposite end of literariness to what you were talking about. But it was really great. It's part of the Old Man's War series, but it's written as a series of short stories that are like linked to each other, which is an unusual format. And I don't usually like short stories that much, but because they were all linked, it didn't really feel that way. And yeah, it's just a really nice. It got me thinking about why I love space opera stuff. It's full of kind of intrigue and heroism and quirky characters in this epic space setting. So yeah, really good.
Awesome. Critical hits all around. Amazing. Thank you so much to everybody for coming and joining us. I hope you found it interesting. We'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. And it's a very loud siren going on. Have a lovely day. Bye, everybody.
Start waving. Keep waving.